about what kavunas to have when you mention the Shemis HaKadoshim. Mention the Shachnurich, Yid Kai Vuvkai, Hoyu Hoive V'yeh, Aleph Dalet Ni and Yid. So you have in mind both, because we pronounce it Aleph Dalet Ni and Yid, and actually it says Yid Kai Vuvkai, so you have in mind our man, my master, and Hoyu Hoive V'yeh. So this morning, discussing the Shia, sometimes you find in Tehillim where it says Hashem several times, and you pronounce it Elikim. This is in Kapitel Ayin Aleph, Kapitel Kuf Mem Aleph, where it says Uvoi B'Gvrila Yisa Aleph Dalet Nin Yit, Yit Kai Vuf Kai, and you pronounce it not Adoi, you pronounce it Elikim. There's a Kli and a Ksiv. It's written Yit Kai Vuf Kai, but you pronounce it Elikim. And several times until you find that. So the question is, what kavuna to have when you come to this Shem? So if it's Hashem, Yit Kai Vuf Kai, you pronounce it Aleph Dalet Ni Nid, then you have in mind Aleph Dalet Ni Nid, my master, and Hoyu Hoive V'yeh, every Hashem. But over here, it's written Yit Kai Vuf Kai, and you read it Elikim. That's the question. So I found the Tshiva in Sefer Shaivat HaLevi, in Chayrik Zayin Simen Kuf Kif Ches. He brings this Shaila. And he says, the Tilla Duvet asks this Shaila. The Tilla Duvet says, Mamukim Sheyesh Kri Al Yit Kai Vuf Kai Elikim, have in mind both. It says, look in the Ramban, the Rechaim HaKodesh, and Pashas V'ez Chanan. So you have in mind both kavunas when you mention that Shem. Tefillah b'tzibah. When I say Tefillah b'tzibah, davening the Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibah. There are many levels in Tefillah b'tzibah. Meaning that there's a lechatchila, the best way, Tefillah b'tzibah, and then you have different levels, lower levels in Tefillah b'tzibah. The best level in Tefillah b'tzibah is when a person davens with minyan, at least 10 people together. They start together the Shemoneh Esrei. Now, first of all, people think that the Ikket Tefillah is Kaddish and Kiddush. Does it make a difference if I start together with about Tefillah Buyich Atu? No, that's a mistake. Because the most lechatchiladige way is when you start the Brucha together, Buyich Atu Hashem Goa Yisrael, Hashem Susai Tiftach, if you Yagdir together. Except Hashem Susai Tiftach, one of the Mahalchim of the Mishnah is start that before. This way you don't have a problem. It's a machlokes in the Poskim, if you answer Umayna Goa Yisrael or not. So if you start Hashem Susei Tiftach before the Chazdim completes Goa Yisrael, then you don't have to answer Umayna. Or there's another way of saying together, that's how we say it, together with the Chazdim, Buyich Atu Hashem Goa Yisrael, and you continue the Hashem Susei Tiftach. But to say that it doesn't make a difference where I'm up to, no. Pri Megudim says, if you start later, it's not called Tefillah b'tzibah. Well, many other poskim, we'll see in a minute, paskin otherwise, that we have chances of to chaperayin Tefillah b'tzibah, but the most lechatchiladige way is to start together with the tzibah, Hashem Susei Tiftach and the Shemoneh Esrei. So, I guess it's well said if we say that there's a chiv on every person to come to shul on time in order for him to start together. This way, he'll be able to start Shemoneh Esrei together. If he starts later, obviously he'll have a problem by the Shemoneh Esrei. B'shas Adchak, a person did come late. It happens. There are other poskim that say, Mugen Avruam, okay, Lakudosh, it's still Tefillah b'tzibah. Others say that. Again, Pri Megudim says it's not considered Tefillah b'tzibah, mamish, only when we start together. The Noida Behida says in Bruchas Davov, interesting tzlach, that even when the tzibah is up to Ashrei V'Letzion, and you're starting Shemoneh Esrei, in a certain way, it's also another level of Tefillah B'Tzibah, which is a Chiddush. Finish Shemoneh Esrei, finish Tachna, but you didn't finish Ashrei V'Letzion, and you could still chaperein Tefillah B'Tzibah by starting Shemoneh Esrei, while the Tzibah is saying Ashrei V'Letzion. But again, the best way is, together with the Tzibah, to start together, the words Hashem Tzvusai Tiftach in the Shemoneh Esrei. A person davens Shemoneh Esrei with the Chazan. He couldn't catch up, and he davened Kriya Shema the way it says in Sim Samachalev Shachanurich, every word. If I'm mentioning that already, the Messiah brings a beautiful piece from the Zohar, Kriya, in a child. And he said, if a person says Kriya Shema, every word, every letter, he doesn't miss meaning. I mentioned this before. The Yisod Shorish Avodah has two sets of Kriya Shema, how you can say it wrong and how you can say it right. V'samtem es. If you say it too quick, it doesn't sound like v'samtem es, it sounds very bad, v'samtem es. And many words like that, where if you do it too quick and it gets mixed, it's a Toises and Bruches Daf Yud Gimel. Toises has a few Mashulim words where it sounds terrible if you say it quick. Not only that, it says over there in the Bes Yosef, there are 248 words minus 3. Every word is for another limb. If a person pronounces the Kriya Shema every morning, twice a day, properly, doesn't miss a letter, then he'll be healthy throughout his life. Every word is for another limb. And it's missing 3 letters, that's why we repeat again Hashem Elokai Chamemes, to complete the number 248. So if someone would go quick and say Minu Kozois, Emes V'Yatzev ahead, now he's missing those 3 words. Savada, it's to wait until the Chazan says, repeats again Hashem Elokai Chamemes, and then you could continue. So let's go back to this. Davening Shemoneh Esrei, and you couldn't catch up to daven the quiet Shemoneh Esrei, and now you caught up together with the Chazan. Interesting machloikis in the Achronim. The Bechut says in Siman Niyam Bais, ain't sufik, not even a doubt, that if a person davens together with the Chazan, starts from Burich and continues the whole Shemoneh Esrei, he's Makayim Tefillah B'Tzibah. The Pri Megudim says Ani Mistapik, also Niyam Bais, in a few places the Pri Megudim. I have a doubt if that's considered Tefillah B'Tzibah. Because the main Tefillah B'Tzibah is davening the quiet Shemoneh Esrei with everyone. That's Tefillah B'Tzibah. Well, there's a major difference between Tefillah B'Tzibah and davening on your own. Now, he's davening in the shul, and has that ma'ila, Mura Bruchas Davuf. He's davening with a tzibah, but it's not Tefillah B'Tzibah. As we said before, it's a different level. Not Tefillah B'Tzibah. So therefore, if a person is late, yes, he could rely on those poskim that say that's also considered Tefillah B'Tzibah. But we have to understand that the chetchilah way Tefillah B'Tzibah, as we mentioned before, it's not. To daven the quiet Shemoneh Esrei, Tefillah B'Tzibah. Some Sofer also holds that you could do it in the Hoicha Shemoneh Esrei, but l'chetchilah avada is the quiet Shemoneh Esrei. When a person davens the Shemoneh Esrei, and he has in mind all the kavunas, the shemus, and it takes him longer, the Shemoneh Esrei, no question. And when it comes to Kedisha, he won't make it. What do you do then? He won't make it to say Kedisha with a tzibah. So what's the solution? Is avada he should daven slow. Daven your pace. Don't rush. So the Kaddish Kedisha. Don't rush. The Shemoneh be able to catch the Kedisha that the Shliach Tzibah is going to say, or B'marav the Kaddish. And you don't have to start Shemoneh even earlier in order to catch up for Kedisha, because we said before you should start together. So there's a tshiva from the Puparuf. He says that Sheval Tasa, don't do something that is wrong to start the Shemoneh before in order to catch up. Rather, Sheval Tasa, start with the tzibah together. If you're starting with the tzibah together, then you're safe. And what's going to happen later? We'll worry about that later. So what should he do? We'll discuss in a minute. But once you start with the tzibah, you know you're safe. So he will listen to Kedisha and Kaddish of the tzibah, of the Shliach tzibah. But there's another shayla. Stop the Shemoneh and listen what the Chazan is saying. As we mentioned already in one shir, the Gemara Bruchas Daf Chuf Aleph and Toisus asks Akasha and Asher. And Asher says, stop, listen, Shemaya Koine. It's as if you said the Kedisha. But Toisus asks that if Shemaya Koine, listening, is like saying it, that means you're mafsik in the middle of your Shemoneh saying Kedisha, you're not allowed. So if you are together with a Chazan and you say the Brucha, the Uvois, and you're up to together with a Chazan Kedisha, is one thing, fine, say it with a Chazan. But if you are not up to where the Chazan is up to, and you are, let's say, in the middle of a Shiva Shevtaini, stop and listen what the Chazan says. Toisus asks Akasha, that means you're mafsek in the middle of Shemoneh, in the middle of a Shiva Shevtaini, you're making a half sukkah of saying something else. But Toisus says, but that's the meaning.
We have to also go through the motions, right? We freeze wherever we are, listen, but we do the
Yes. Well, now I have a shayla. Interesting shayla. What happened? You could make kudosh. Shayla is a person, a few shaylas, but it's one shayla. A person came to shul to daven mincha, and he finds out that they're already davening marv. What am I going to do now? So the solution would be, you know what? I'm going to say kabbalah. I'm going to say Ashrei. By the time the tzibah gets to Shemoneh of Mariv, I'll daven mincha, tefillah b'tzibah. That means I'm davening mincha and they're davening Mariv. Can you do that? So, to answer this shayla, it's a long discussion where the tzlach brings Amun Avruam, the tzlach davov brings Amun Avruam. It's naftzad, is simin tzadik. Because the Gemara says that if a person cannot go to shul, at least daven home in the same time the shul is davening shachris or mincha, whatever it is. Daven at the same time. Don't daven shachris and they're davening misif. Daven at the same time. I'm not going through the whole lengthy discussion. It's also, the Mavrum discusses this in Siman Shlam Advov, the Primagudim. It's a big machloikis if you could mix and match. Mavrum says, well, it's a steal, it's a contradiction. He's davening mincha, he's davening mariv. You can't mix. So therefore, we are going to say that it's a form of tefillah. He's davening with a tzibah, but it's not considered tefillah b'tzibah. Again, different levels in tefillah b'tzibah. I have another shayla to ask. Let's say one person is davening shachlis, he's up to Nakdishach, and the chazan is saying misif, Shchoyde, Shabbos. He really came late to shul. If he's up to the quiet Shemoneh Shachar is before Ata Kudosh, and the Chazan is up to Misif, the same place before Ata Kudosh. The Chazan is going to say Kesa Yitnedachu, and he's going to say Nakdisha v'Naritzach. The Chazan is going to say Yachad, the whole long Kedisha, and he's going to say short Nakdisha v'Naritzach, and Mekoimchu, whatever it is, even the weekday in Shchodesh. What do you do then? This is a major machloikis, the Machabe and the Nemu. I think it's few to buys. Keep tests. Yeah. Now, let's make this clear that we are not talking about when this person is up to Nagdishach and the Chazan is up to Kudosh in Evolutzion. That's not the question. You cannot say Kudosh. That's, everybody agrees that. So all this starts, the Yosef brings Achivas Hagoinim, and then he brings a Rashba, the Beis Yosef has one shot. Dr. Moshe the Remu argues with the Beis Yosef, and the Shulchan Aruch also brings the Machlokes. Interesting to say this inside. Yuchid hu oimid b'tfila, a yuchid is davening Shemoneh Esrei. When it comes to Kedisha, the Tzibbe is saying Kedisha the Sidra, by Evolutzion. You shouldn't say with them Nakdisha, because they or say Kudosh with them. Aina Kedisha Shuva, it's not the same. Hiyadin, if the Tzibbe is saying Keseh, you shouldn't say Kudosh. Just be quiet and listen. So according to the Machaber, he paskins that the person who's davening Shachris is up to Kedisha, he should not say it along with the Chazan who's saying Kesef and Misif. But the Nemu argues, Kedish's Kesef of Misif is the same as Nagdishah by Shachris. It doesn't make a difference if Ashkenaz Naritzchu, it doesn't make, it's all the same. Just by mixing the Kedisha from Misif and Kedisha of Shachris. But one thing is for sure, that the Machaber would be maskim, that things that are the same, the Kedishas are not the same, but the Kudosh is the same. Lamaisa, I'm not sure on that Nakida. Lamaisa, according to the Machaber, you shouldn't, it seems that you should just, he says you should be quiet and listen. I mean, you shouldn't say anything. Just listen to the Kedisha of the missive, but you shouldn't say anything. That you shouldn't do. Yishtok v'yichav namasho imrim shamaya koina.
No matter what part of Shachris the person is up.
No, we're talking now about the Shemoneh Esrei.
No matter what part of the Shemoneh Esrei.
No matter what part of the Shemoneh Esrei, correct. Other parts of Tefillah is a different samunim in the Shulchan Aruch. We're dwelling now on this year on the Shemoneh Esrei. So it seems it's going to be a machlokes Sfaradim and Ashkenazim when it comes to this halacha. Ashkenazim would mix the Kedisha, Shachris and Misif, and Sfaradim would not. Machaber is very against it. Yosef in the Shulchan Aruch says you shouldn't do that. In Simon Pif Yid Bais. almost about to start Uvois, the first Bruch of Shemoneh Esrei. I think it's about time. Look at that Torah. The Torah says in Sim Kif Yid Beis, it's a Gemara in Bruchis Daf Lamed Daled. The Gemara says a mama of Lev Yehida, Al Yish Udam Tzruchav Loi Beshulish Shainis Loi Beshulish Achrainis Edem Tzuis. A person shouldn't ask for his personal needs, the first 3 Bruchis in the Shemoneh Esrei, and not the last 3 Bruchos in Shemoneh Esrei. Only in the middle 12. And the Gemara explains, the first 3 Bruchos in Shemoneh Esrei is doimes is compared to a evet, to a servant that is misada, the praise, the shvach lefnai rabbi, praise for his master. Imtzuos is compared to a evet, he asks whatever he needs from his master. Achroinois is compared to the Eved. He praises him and he leaves. So we see from these chazals, when it comes to the first 3 bruchos and Shemoneh Esrei and the last, you shouldn't add anything to the Shemoneh Esrei. But we could ask a kasha. Don't we add Zechrein L'chaim? Micha Moichu? Okay, HaMelech HaKudosh? But that's not in the list. But Zechrein L'chaim, Micha Moichu. And many add Peitim throughout the Yontif Shemoneh Esrei. Shachris, sometimes Misif. So the Toises, the Ba'itam, that he says that this din of not adding anything in the first 3 Bruchos in Shemoneh Esrei, it's dafke tzorach hayuchet. For your personal needs, you shouldn't ask. But tzorach tzibah, things that are needed for the public, you could add in the first Bruchos, the first 3 and the last 3. Don't we see that we added Yalav Yuvoi? That's also part of the last 3 bruchos on its side. So we see it's Tzorach Harab. Tzorach Harab is not a problem if you add. This is what it says in Simei Kif Yid Beis. Therefore, the Machaber says in Kif Yid Beis, Al Yishel Udam Tzruchav B'Shuloi She'Shoinois, he shouldn't add anything in the first 3 bruchos, not in the last 3 bruchos. Dafke Tzorach HaYuchit. But Tzorach Harab is Mitte. Why is Tzorach Harab Mitte? Listen to these words. Says the Torah, Higam kain me'en hashvach v'kuvit l'rav she'rab tzrichen loy. When you ask for a public, you mispal for the tzibah, for Klal Yisrael. Isn't that a great honor for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Isn't that a praise to Hashem that we are asking Him for Yeshias, not for our own needs, but for the public? Therefore, when we add Zechrein Ni L'chaim, remember us, L'chaim to life. That means we're asking not only for ourselves, for our family, friends, for Klal Yisrael, and that is how we praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu when we ask that. So therefore, that is allowed. So before we continue, I would like to explain what we just said now from the Sfurim Magdoshim, what it means, asking for a Rabbin. So a person may think that I cannot daven for myself. Yes, you cannot daven for yourself. But let's understand, how should a person daven? And when he says these words, What should he have in mind? What's the best way that I should daven that my tefillah should be answered? Let's put it that way. First, I mentioned Anoy Melech in Parshas Vayechi. Anoy Melech says, on the Pusik, Vayikri v'yamai, he says like this. In the first mamish, it's not a coincidence that I found this Anoy Melech, mamish on this discussion that we have now. There's no tefillah in Bakusha and the first three bruchas in Shemeres, he says. Mamish what we just said now is semi-kifid bais. What's the reason? The reason is the first three bruchas in Shemeres, Haim ba'oilamois huel yoinem. These are in the upper worlds. V'sham ein kitrik klal. There's no kitrik, there's no malach that speaks against the tefillah when he says these three bruchas. Therefore, ein tzurich shim tefillah rakteles v'tashbuchais. Don't have to add anything. Just praise Hashem. Ki ein tefillah eile b'mukim kitrik. Tefillah is only mukim kitrik. It's not tefillah. Don't make a mistake that these three bruchas are considered the first three bruchas of tefillah Shemoneh Esrei. The first three bruchas are not tefillah. Call it tehillah. Because tefillah is only when there's a kitrik. There's no kitrik in these three bruchas, because that's already bo'olim b'slo yoinim. So let me explain this. The first time we find in the Torah the Indian of Hakudas Hatov, I'll mention the Indian of Hakudas Hatov, and then I will tie it together with this. First time we find in the Torah of Hakudas Hatov is in Parshas Vayetzai. When Yehuda was born, Leah gave birth to Yehuda. She said, Apam oide es Hashem, al kain kodesh shemo Yehuda. So Rashi says, Shunatalti yoyse mechelkim, more than my chaylik. And now I could thank Hashem. What does that mean? So first there's a Maram Shik that says, the Gemara says, until Leah came, there was no one that thanked Hashem like Leah. Well, many people thanked Hashem before. Noach didn't thank Hashem. Yitzchak, Yaakov thanked Hashem. But the way she thanked Hashem, no one ever thanked Hashem. What did she do different than anyone else? In her mind, she was so appreciative to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he gave her another child, a son. He said, thank you, that's it? I'm Yoitze? No, you have to keep on thanking again and again. Every time I'm going to call my son Yehidu, that's a thanks to Hashem. Yehidu means thanking. It could be 10 or 50 times a day. When she calls a Yehidu, that's another thank to Hashem. Hapam oides Hashem, only once. Al kain kodesh shemo Yehidu, therefore she called him by the name Yehidu. We see by tzaddikim this concept. Giving praises to Hashem wasn't only that second. It was continuous. And Rav Chaim HaKadosh says it in this week's Parshas Vayechi. Chaim HaKadosh says, V'yoyim ve'yosef eloviv. Bunai hayim asher nusan li Elokim. Yaakov said, who are these? Bunai, these are my children that Hashem gave me. Says the Rav Chaim HaKadosh, why did Yosef HaTzadik have to add these words? Asher nusan li Elokim bezeh. What was the point of adding these words? So I'm quoting the words of the Rav Chaim HaKadosh. Derech tzadikim. The derech is of tzadikim. Kishezoichrem hatoyev asher higiyom. When they mention the good that they receive, choilkim kuvet laHashem ki hi anoisai. They give thanks to Hashem because it's Hashem that gives us the good thing. So every time a good thing comes, you thank Hashem. Praise Hashem. The B'yaner Rebbe, when he was in the older years and he wasn't well, he didn't have koyach to daven. When he would have koyach, a little bit of koyach, he would say Aleph Bayis Gimel Dalet. So those who heard him say Aleph Bayis Gimel Dalet, they didn't know what he was talking. Maybe he has in mind some kind of shemus. And they asked him, what's the pshat of the Aleph Bayis Gimel Dalet? With this you have to understand Yiddish. So he said, Aleph Bayis Gimel Dalet is a bissel besser. Aleph Bayis is a bissel besser, a little bit better. And Gimel Dalet is Gott sei Dank. Thank Hashem. So if you couldn't daven, you didn't have koyach, he said, Aleph Bayis Gimel Dalet. I'm a little bit better, thank Hashem. So now, Al Pirov, people think when they need something and they daven to Hashem, you have to daven and plead and beg Hashem. I need this, I need parnasa, I need health. So that's a mistake. That's wrong. So what's the right way? The right way, as I said before, the proper way to daven, the tefillah should be answered, that should be a poyel yeshiyos, is not to put the main dugish, the main point, what I need. I need this, I need that. The main dugish should be praising Hashem. Shvach hadua lebayra olam, to give a thanks for Hashem. As we once mentioned the story another time, that the basis rule once said you have to thank 60% and daven 40%. Then if a person does this, he davens to Hashem by praising Hashem, Ikedugish is praising Hashem, then you should know that tefillah would be answered. So the first proof to this is from a shtickle Beis Aham, the Baran Kalina. In Parshas B'Shalach, it says in the Pusik, V'yoyma Hashem el Moshe, Ma titzak alai, daber b'nai Yisroi v'yisui. Why are you screaming? Just move on, move ahead. On one side you have the Mitzrayim are coming closer and closer. On the other side you have the Yamsif, the Yam. Where are we going? And Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, what do you mean, Ma titzak alai? Ma luni la'asos? What should we do? Isn't this the proper thing? We're in trouble, we're in duress, we have to shout to him. That's what Hashem says, titzak is another way of davening. 10 Lishonis in Tefillah. It's another way of davening. And that point where they saw this, they need help, emergency, immediately. Or else, they're gone. So they started shouting, So Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, Ma'alunin, what should we do if not shouting? Listen to the text. The Medrash says, Umalo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ulechu litoin shiv v'shevach lemisha ma'amlucha shaloi. You should give praise for Hashem, who is the King of the world. And this is the Medrash. Basaran explains. The Derech Olam is, when a person needs something, makes a bakosha to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He needs a fear, he needs atzlucha, he needs atzlucha in business. So what does he do? He says Tehillim. When he says Tehillim, he has a mind. What's the dugish? I'm saying Tehillim because I need a Yeshia now. He says, David HaMelech didn't do that. What did David HaMelech do? Apusik and Shmiel, Mehilol Ekru Hashem Imo Oivai Ivushaya. Which means, when David HaMelech, he needed a Yeshia so desperately. My enemies are running after me. They want to kill me. He didn't daven for that specific. What did he do? Mehilol Ekru Hashem. He started singing Shirois V'Tishbuchois, singing Tehillim songs, singing to Hashem. And automatically, Ma'oivai Ivushaya. He was saved that his enemies didn't catch him. That's exactly what Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu. Don't daven direct for what you need, what you should do. Daven shvach, daven tehillu, praise Hashem. And automatically the Yeshia will come. Put the dugash over there. If you put the dugash over there, then your tefillah will be answered. Not only that, the Metzidas Duvid in Sefer Shmiel Bais, Pitl Chov Bais, Pusik Dalid, Metzidas Duvid writes on the Pusik, Mehilo, listen to these words, Kishani koire es Hashem bahalel, oz ani noishaya. When I say Hallel, when I praise Hashem, then I will be helped. Exactly the words of the Beis Ahad.
You see, the first words that come out of his mouth every morning is Moidani Lefaneta.
Emes, yeah. Emes, it's also a Zoya. The Zoya says the same thing in Parshas Vayishlach. Translation of the Zoya is, a person is Mishabayach HaKadosh Baruch Hu always. And Hashem is Misratza through his Shirois V'Tishbuchos. A person knows how to praise Hashem the way it should. Makabel Tefilos Yamatza Loisai. His Makabel is Tefillah and he saves him. And the same thing it says in the Mabit. Mabit writes on Tefillah, in Shah Tefillah Paidik Tes, he writes, the Ikar Tefillah is not l'tzoyrech udam bezeh hu'olam, what I need, what a person needs in this world. Ki im lahalal shmo yizburayich, to praise Hashem, l'saper, to tell over His greatness, niflo Isav, v'noiru Isav. The Ikar Kavuna is, you should have a mind, tishbuchois hu'kail yizburayich. Ikar Kavunis ha-tefillah hi b'tishbuchois hu'kail yizburayich, with this, your tefillos will be answered. The Noam Elimelech writes in the Kita Shoshanu, which he wrote himself. The Noam Elimelech was written by Talmidim. There's a part of the Noam Elimelech in the back, the Kita Shoshanu, and that he wrote himself. And he writes, the Gemara says in Megillah Rav Yibais, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends the Refiah before the Makkah. So he explains, what does it mean? Tehiloisov v'shvuchav, the praising Hashem, that we praise Hashem b'shapchim b'fu'arim, shemoy agudoil, ze boire refias. This is boire refias. Not davening for boire refias, saying shvach et tilu ala kadosh baruch Hu. This is the refiah before the Makkah. Through that, the person has refias.
So practically speaking, we daven shachris mincha maariv. So what should we do to up our game?
I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
And that's building our building. I'm getting to that. What connection does a Kudas Atov have to this year? We're getting to that. The Or Shamayim writes, the Abteruf, the Mayil Abter, I heard B'Shem Hu Adme Medune V'Rabune Maylach Mlezhensk. Hoidi Lashem Ki Toiv Hi Taiches. Toiv Mo'oid, Hoidi Lashem Toiv Ki Toiv. Toiv Mo'oid Lo Hoidois Lefunav Yizburich Shemoy. It's good to praise Hashem. Ki Lo Oilam Chazdoi. Through that, Lo Oilam Chazdoi, the world, and you will always have chesed. Same concept. Hoidi Lashem, you always have to praise and thank and be mahal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By doing that, Ki Lo Oilam Chazdoi. And now, in the drushas of the Rebbe Kiva Eger, in Madide Ches, Rebbe Kiva Eger writes, he once gave a drusha, this is part of his drusha, an expert of his drusha. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Makor, He is the Makor of all the bruchas. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the well of all hashpuas. It's not shaykh in the world that someone should thank enough HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything, for all the good and all the HaKadosh Baruch, all the hashpuas he receives of him. Therefore, there's no need to thank Hashem. It's impossible to be yoitze. Afal piken, you shouldn't stop thanking Hashem. You have to be makah toiven. I'll be mafsik for 1 second. It says in the Rishash, in Masechta Shvius, There's a minhag olam that after the kohen comes off the dichen, after Kaddish, everybody says, Shkoyach kohen, Shkoyach kohen. Why do we do that? The kohen is mitzvah, there's a mitzvah es in the Torah, the kohen has to bench Yid. If he doesn't, he's over be'esa. So why do we have to thank him? Said that the Shash Meher we see, even though he is obligated to bench you, you have a favor from him, you have to thank him. And there's a few other ayes we see from Moshe Rabbeinu, Parashat Shemos, V'aydu, that he didn't, the makis that had to do with water, he didn't do because he had a favor from the water. We find many chazals similar to that. Let's continue to B'Kiva. If you do someone a favor, B'Kiva says, and you don't thank him, he won't do it again. Because the thanking him gives him the incentive to do again a toiva for you. That's goydem that he shouldn't do any favors. If we will recognize the chesed of Hashem, we will be moide and bench him. That causes that Hashem should give us even more good things because we thanked him before. Because if you don't thank, then I will conclude this Indian with an amazing story. And then we'll tie it in. The Chadish Shalem, the Yaitav Lev says, where does it come that a Yid is called a Yid? You're called Yehidim. Because the Shaydish of a Yid is to thank and praise Hashem. A nefesh Yehidah, a nefesh of a Yid, is a Ben Melech. We find this many times in Chazal. Yid are called a Ben Melech. Every Yid is a Ben Melech. And it's in our blood, in our veins, that we are kind. Goim lechasudim, the three signs of a Yid, Chazal say. That's why we have so many organizations of chesed, of chasudim that one does for another, because it's ingrained in us. This is what our fathers and great fathers, until going back to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Avram Avinu, always did chesed. So there's an amazing story brought down. The Tsar of Russia, he had one son, a Ben Yuchid. And this son never left the palace. He was always in the palace. So his father one day decided that really we should give him the opportunity to go around the world, or around all his cities, countries, towns, and let him meet the citizens of the country. See how the world works, what he could do for them to better their lives. And he discussed it with his advisors. And they said, yeah, it's a very good idea. That he should, rather he would take along a whole entourage, his secret service, and etc., etc. And he started the trip. He went from town to town, from city to city, until he reached to Leipzig. Leipzig is a place where they had a huge market, a shuk, where people would come every day and put out their stands, and from all over the world they would come and buy everything that's needed. It came to Leipzig. That was the place where thousands of people came. And he came to that shuk, to that marketplace. He said, when I go home, I would like to buy my father and mother a gift, something special. So he comes to a stand where they sell expensive stone, pearls, very expensive merchandise, jewelry. And he asks him, how much is all this? He would buy the whole thing. He said, the whole thing? Buy one piece or buy the... I have enough money, I'm going to buy the whole thing. And he gives him a price, no problem. But I want to see if it's authentic, if it has the value. How do you call it? Gemologist? GIA wants to see if it's authentic. Not laboratory, he wants the real stuff, original. And they told him, yeah, there's a Yid in jail. He is the biggest mimcha. He'll tell you if it's authentic or not. So, how do you get to jail? But he has no problem. Just came to the jail. And he wants to meet that chuchem. All the doors open for him. And he goes right in, and he meets this Yid, and he asks him, how much is this worth? He looks at it. He says, it's worth, he would pay 1,000 ruble. It's worth maybe a few ruble. It's glass. Not close to the most expensive jewelry that you were told. He took one and he threw it down and it broke. So that's the sign that it's glass. And he left. Okay. So now the person who sold it to him, he wasn't quiet about it, and he went next. He sees a beautiful white horse. This is something special. He never saw something like it. He wants to buy the horse. So where do you go? I tell him, if you want really to have a proper evaluation on this horse, where do you go? To the Yid in the jail. And he he asks the Yid, what do you say about this horse? He says, this horse is dangerous. Once the nature of this horse, if you go on the horse, he's going to kill you. And if you want to test me out if this horse is good or not, tell the person who's selling it to you that you should go on the horse and let's see what happens. It's exactly what happened. You see, there's a chuchem. So if he's such a big chuchem, he gave him this advice and he was right. Let me speak to him again. I want to hear from him something, wisdom, some chachma from him. He went back to the jail and he asked for the Yid. And right away he went in. And he asked him some chachma, something that I don't know yet. So the Yid told him, I'm afraid to tell you what you don't know yet. Because I'm afraid you or your father will punish me if I say it. The son told him, the son of the king, I promise you, I swear to you, that no harm will be done to you, no nezek, no tsar. And he wrote it on a piece of paper and he promised him that nothing is going to happen. He's fine. He told him that he wants to be private with him, nobody in the room. Everybody left. It's only between the Yid and the son of the Tsar. And he told him, you should know that you are not the natural son of the king and the queen. He saw that he was the big chuchem from before, so I believe it's true. He didn't think otherwise, but he couldn't understand it. With the horse and with the stones, most probably he's right here again. And he goes home. Thank you. Not even sure if he said thank you, but he left. And he went home with his whole chevra. And he was so depressed and upset that he didn't travel anymore around. Right away he went home. Comes home, he meets his mother. He said, Mommy, Mother, why didn't you tell me that I'm not your biological son? She fainted on the spot. When the Tsar heard that his wife is out, so he felt, Minastam, the son came home after such a long trip, he had such a gewaltige hatzlucha, let's hear about the trip. This is what he thought, but that wasn't the case. And he asks him the same question, why didn't you tell me that I'm not your real son? Then he understood why his wife fainted. So the Tsar asks him, who told you? Who told you that you're not my son? It's not true. So he told him, I cannot tell you who told me, because you're going to punish him, and I promised him that no harm is going to come out of this. He told him the whole story, with the horse and with the stones, and the person's in jail, and he was right both times, and I believe he's right now again. So I would like to go and see him. I promise you that I won't do anything. I won't do any harm to him. So he travels there. He gets to the jail. Rather, they opened the jail immediately. And he goes into the room, and the Yid was shocked. He himself came. First he was nervous. I'm finished. He said, no, I promised that nothing is going to happen. And he sent everybody out of the room, and only he was left alone with the Yid. And he asked him, how do you know that? And first he told me that's the truth. He's talking about my son. I killed his mother and father in the woods, and I took the child when he was a baby. He was a few weeks old. But how do you know? Listen to this. The Yid answered, I saved your son's money when he came to ask me, when he asked me about the pearls. Not only that, I saved his life when he asked me about the horse. And he didn't tell me a word about freeing me, taking me out of jail, or to lessen I shouldn't have to sit that long, just left. That's not the way a son of a king acts. A melech has rachmanis. A child of a melech, if he grew up in your house, he would have more rachmanis than I saw in him. So therefore, I figured, it must be he's not your son. So what does this story tell us? This story is an amazing misahaskel. The Chazal will misakin, the Anshe Knes Sagdoidel will misakin to them 3 times a day. Because we are Ben Meluchim. Therefore we have to give a Shavach v'hayduah lovini sheba shamayim that gives life, that gives health and gives wealth. Davening is a terche, waking up early morning. In middle of the day, mincha, the chosef the tefillah, we see later, you have to stop anything you do to daven mincha, or mariv, sometimes late, you have to go to minyan. We are ben meluchim. It's ingrained in our veins, in our body, being ben meluchim, that we have to thank Hashem, av shvach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only when that happens, even later. And every time we have a favor from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and any time we need something, the dugish is not what we need. The dugish is shvach v'hoidu and tehilul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As David the Melech says, Mehillah Allah shemekru min oiva ivushaya, the Yeshia will come. So when we start Uvais, the Shemoneh Esrei of Uvais, the first three bruchas of Shemoneh Esrei, and the first brucha is Uvais. Uvais you cannot add any personal needs, only for a tzibur. But when a person praises HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which the first brucha, 3 bruchas comes, isn't Shamayim, there's no kitrik. That's the most valuable place where a person's tefillah could be answered. You cannot say anything, you cannot have in mind anything, but when a person praises Hashem, when he says that brucha, and he has a mind, the perish minis, the words that it says in Birchas Uvos, he has a mind, every word, that means he praises Hashem properly, and the last 3 bruchas, it's all tefillah tzibur. It's davening, personal needs for the tzibur, but even Our own needs could be answered in the Berches Hashva. The Rebbe should help that all our tefillos should be answered. Everything that we need, Panusa, Bunachayim, Zon Revich.